Hi there. This is a very typical problem that comes up often. Uh, it is a match to 11, and the score is 11 away, 11 away. Notice that I keep the score showing the away score. You can right-click, and you can show the absolute score, 0, 0 to 11. But even on a score pad, I write down the away score because that's the score that matters in backgammon. How many points you have to go, not how many points you have made. And that's what all of our match equity and gammon values and cube and checker play are based on, the away score. So it's a good habit to get into thinking of the away score when you're practicing on extreme gammon or practicing or even playing in live matches. Okay, so red is holding a 2 cube and has a 5-4 to play. The pip count, if you can't read it, is 73 to 71. So before the roll, red is down 2 pips. After the roll, red would be up 7 pips. If he doesn't hit, hit. Did you think about hitting? Most people don't even think about hitting here. The question is, do you play it quietly? And if you do, how do you play it? Or do you hit? I wish I could give you a very firm, definitive rule of thumb that says if you're up so many pips you hit, and if you're not, you don't hit. But it really does depend on whether your opponent has a closed board, whether you have all of your points made. If you hit here, you get hit back 13 times, and you have to look at what are your odds of covering or lifting if you don't get hit. If you had the ace point made, you would be more inclined to hit. However, you'd be up more pips, so that might make a difference. Generally, the rule of thumb seems to be somewhere around 10% up in the race after the roll to not hit if hitting is fatal. And when you get hit here, it isn't necessarily fatal because of the open 4 point. But you have enough here, just enough here, to play without hitting. And another reason it's just enough to play without hitting is your opponent doesn't always escape. Sometimes your opponent will roll under a 4 or be blocked by rolling double 2s or double 4s or a 3-1 or a double 1 or a 2-1 or a 4-1 or a 4-2. That's a lot of numbers. I just had name a lot of numbers where he doesn't escape. If he doesn't escape, you're going to be up in pretty good shape in the race also. So there's some good reasons not to hit here. And the answer is that you don't hit. It'd be about only a 3% error to hit. It wouldn't take much to turn this into a hit. For example, let's just put your opponent up a couple more pips. Let's just move this 3 pips, and it's going to be very right to hit. Almost a blunder not to hit when I just move this 3 pips from there to there. So you can see how close it is and how sensitive it is. At the same time, let's move it up 3 pips to there. Well, let me go back to the original position, make sure I have got the original position. There's the original position where it's slightly wrong to hit. I wanted to make sure I get it right. Now let's make your pip count worse by 3 pips, and it's very right to hit, about a 5% error not to. Now let's see what happens when you keep the same 2 pip counts but you close your opponent's board. It's real close. You can see it made a 5% difference as to whether or not the 4 point was open or not. So it really is sensitive to all those issues. Here's something I find very interesting. I want to show you this again. It's right to hit here because I moved those 3 pips. Let's go back to the original. I'm hitting Control C to save the position, and then Control V puts the position back in again. That's a good trick for when you're playing around with positions and you don't have to remember the initial position, you can put it back. Okay, as you recall, it's wrong to hit here by about 3.5%. You just are better off actually the wins are pretty close to the same. Hitting, you actually win a little bit more. The problem is that you get gammoned several times when you hit, about 3% more. And that's really the difference in these two positions that much. You don't really win many gammons either way, although you actually do win 1% more gammons by hitting, and you win the game a tiny bit more, but you get gammon too much if things go wrong. That seems to be the swing in this position. And that's what these numbers are so good for. You need to really look at these. By the way, when you get extreme gammon, you don't see these numbers. You have to change to go from display winning percent as, from this silly graphic bar that Xavier likes for some reason, and I can't stand it because I want to see the numbers. So I go display winning percent as values. Okay, but here's really something that's a critical, interesting fact about backgammon. It's wrong to hit here, remember? By 3%. Let's put the cube on your opponent's side, and it's going to be very, very right to hit. I didn't change the checkers at all. It's now right by a good solid amount, by about 3.5% to hit, by changing where the cube is. Why is that? The cube's on 2, and when the cube's on our side, it's better not to hit. When the cube's on his side, it's better to hit. These numbers didn't change, by the way. They're pretty much the same. He still wins pretty close to 60% either way. So why is it right when the cube is on his side? This illustrates an incredibly important concept in backgammon, and that's cube vig, or cube vigorish, or cube value, or the efficiency of your being able to use the cube. When your opponent has the cube, he is in a much stronger position racing because he has an efficient recube. If you're playing a racing game and white rolls well, he can catch up and get to the point where he has a redouble. Let's say he gets to the point where he's 80% favorite and he redoubles and you have to drop. And now he's won the game in a position where he would have lost 20% of the time if you were holding the cube. Because if you're holding the cube and he gets to a position where he's got an 80% chance to win and he would still lose 20% of the time, he is still going to lose 20% of the time. But if he's got the cube, he wins for sure. What about if he gets to a position where he's like 75%? Now he can redouble, and at 75% you have 25%. That's enough to take. Assuming it's not the last roll of the game, your take point's something less than 25%. Probably something closer to 22 or 23, depending on how many rolls are left. So now you have to take. And he has an efficient recube because now he's going to win a lot of games at 4, about 75% of the time. He gets to raise the stakes to 4 because he has this efficient recube. So if you play a racing game, this 60% wins is called cubeless. This is the percentage that white would win, or red would win at this point. This is 60% that red would win on the assumption that there's never ever going to be a cube, that the game is played out to the end. Now, how does this value, or this vig of white holding the cube, not be so good if you hit? Because there's not going to be an efficient cube. When you hit, if he hits back, he's such a big favorite that when he gives you the cube, it didn't matter that much. You were dropping for sure, and he would probably win such a huge percentage of the time anyway that the cube is not really on, it's not going to be on the edge. He's not going to get at the point where he would still lose the game 20% of the time. He's probably a big favorite when he recubes, if it's a highly volatile game and a hitting game. So if he's holding the cube, and it's a racing game, we have a formula that says this value increases by about 1/6. So in this case, he's got about 40% winning chances, and 6 goes into 40 about, say 6.5 times, a little bit more than that, which means that if he's holding the cube, he's really got about 46% chance to win the game. But if you're holding the cube, he only has around 40%. He doesn't get that 1/6 value. So that's a big, big difference. And it applies not just to this position. Keep this in mind in all your cube actions. When you're doubling a game that's a race, one of the reasons that we have to be closer to double is because we're giving him this great value in holding the cube. That's why, for those of you who know the Keith count, in a normal match score, which is 11 away, or a money game, when you give the cube, you don't double until you're over by 4, which is really 2 points over his take point. You really have about 26%. Your opponent has about 26% winning chances, and his take point at that score is about just under 22%. So you're waiting until he's within about 4% of his take point to give the cube, because you're giving him this extra 1/6 value by holding the cube. But if it's a highly volatile situation where you might hit him and gammon him, or hit him and win the game because you've got a double shot or something like that, you're going to be much more likely to give the cube, even if your winning chances are not as high as 74%. You might be doubling when you only have 68% or 65%, if there's some gammons involved as well. But assuming no gammons, you might double when you only have 66, 67, 68% winning chances. But in a race, you wait until you have about 74% winning chances, because of the cube Vig, because of the value of holding the cube in a race. Very, very important concept. I can give you all kinds of positions that illustrate the importance of taking that concept into account into whether you double or not. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you hopefully this weekend at the CSI tournament in Oak Brook, Illinois, where I will be wearing a coat and tie. We're going back to the old-fashioned days and the elegance of backgammon. There's some people who don't like it and resent it. I think it's refreshing and nice once in a while to remember and honor the old days when people used to wear tuxedos to backgammon tournaments. And I will keep you updated. You'll hear from me if I win the tournament. Believe me, you will hear. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.